first question is going to go in alphabetical order, as we did when we did the introductions to Mr. Peter Obi. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Nigeria has failed to meet the poverty-busting targets that it set for itself, with 133 million Nigerians, representing 63% of the populace, now officially thrown into destitution, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. How do you intend to deal with poverty and to contain what is clearly a crisis of privation, penury, and manifest destitution, which seems to be getting worse, not better? And you've got 3 minutes to answer that question.
Well, out of the 3 minutes, for me, let me start by thanking Arise and the other parties that are involved in this third series of the town hall meetings. And I thank the other presidential candidates as well for participating. This increases and makes our democracy better and shows our commitment and respect for those who want to serve. Tonight's town hall meeting issues centers on health, education, human capital, and poverty, though human capital encompasses health and education. And of course, lack of it is the direct consequence of poverty. And I believe that the issues we are discussing is the foundation of the Human Development Index, which again is measured on 3 critical areas of life expectancy, where Nigeria is 55 years, while the global average is 72.8. And of course, in human capital, the last measure that I know published by World Bank in 2018 were 152 over 157. And the poverty, you mentioned it yourself, we're 133. And cumulatively, the Human Development Index were 163 over 191. And this situation, like you mentioned, is unacceptable and calls for one thing, the Great Escape, as mentioned by Nobel Prize winner in 2015 in economics, Angus Deaton of Princeton. The difference between rich and poor nation is health and education. So how do you tackle this? You tackle it by investing in this critical area. And that's what I would do if I have the opportunity of serving. Invest in these critical areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter Obi. And let me come to you, Rabiu Kwankwanso. You have 3 minutes to answer the same question. And presumably you don't need me to repeat the question.
Yes. Thank you very much, Charles. Let me join my brother in thanking all those who have taken the time to organize this town hall meeting. Straight to the point of poverty, the United Nations and the World Bank believe that for any government to pull out people from poverty, that certainly entails 5 major things. The issue of housing, the issue of education, the issue of health, very, very important. And of course, the job opportunities and so on. So these are things that in the course of my experience, especially in Kano, we had an opportunity to pull out so many people from poverty by way of education mainly, right from primary, secondary to tertiary level. Education has always been key to us. It's number 1, number 2, number 3 on our agenda. And of course, Now we have an issue of insecurity, which is also very important. Our situation in Nigeria, whereby people cannot go to the farm, people cannot buy and sell from point B to point C because of insecurity and so on. All these issues aggravated the issue of poverty in this country. And I'm even surprised that we are talking of 133 million people. If you talk to roadside economists, people who do it practically, not necessarily the MBS, will always tell you that the number is much more than 133 million. But in any case, our responsibility is to ensure that there is security in this country, and that is why we decided to increase the number of the military from about 250 to about 1 million, and that of police from about 230,000 to about 1 million also. And of course, we increased the number of other security agencies, increase the training and retraining, provide them with equipments and all what it takes, especially the ICT and so on, to ensure that we secure every square meter in this country. That put together with, of course, the provision of job opportunities based on, for example, the lack of electricity that we have in this country, the issue of infrastructure that must be improved, the quality and the type of education in our tertiary institutions, and of course down to primary education, plus construction in almost all the sectors ranging from our roads to housing and so on and so forth. And that was why in Kano we had an opportunity to construct 3 major cities in 4 years, Kwankwanso, Amana, and Bandrao. We spent billions, over about 40 billion naira out of resources, because it's important to know that our policy is not to go and borrow money.
I have to say you're virtually out of time now. So you've got 15 seconds to round.
Yes, of course, the issue of corruption and all other things that are associated to issues like drugs and so on must be fought frontally, so that at the end of the day we can have our society, our young men and women, to go around and to have job opportunities, and of course to have access to food, to have access to good health, to have access to education,
right,
and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kwankwanso. Let me come to you, Waziri Atiku Abubakar, with the same question. How do you intend to deal with poverty?
Can you give me the question again?
Yes, Nigeria has failed to meet the poverty-busting targets that it set for itself, with 133 million Nigerians, representing 63% of the populace, now officially thrown into destitution. That's according to the National Bureau of Statistics. How do you intend to deal with poverty, which seems to be getting worse, not better?
Thank you, Charles. We have got all the statistics, both internationally and locally. The most important thing, as emphasized by both Peter and Rabiu, fundamentally is education. We have to get our kids educated, and not educated only, but rightly educated. And then by the time you educate them, you find that they become readily available to the private sector, which should be actually the engine of growth. The private sector is the driver of prosperity in any given nation. The responsibility of the public sector, that is the government, is to see how we can incentivize the private sector to really make use of these talented young men and women who will be produced through our educational reform. And educational reform must be in such a way that they are able to cope, with current educational trends. That is technology, innovation, and so on and so forth. But as a developing country, Nigeria's mainstay, as far as employment is concerned, is agriculture. We must revolutionize our agricultural sector to make sure that it employs as many young men and women as possible. And the only way you can do that is to make sure that incentives are given again to the private sector to expand, the agricultural base of the country. As a public sector, as a government, that's the best way you can, ensure that prosperity spreads as much as possible. And the second employer of labor in our economy is the small and medium enterprises. And that's why we propose to set aside a very, very substantial amount of money so that the small and medium enterprises can be funded. In other words, making our young men and women to access those funds, to be able to set up businesses and therefore, as much as possible, reduce, the rate of our poverty is very, very important.
Thank you very much indeed, Waziri Atiku Abubakar, and before him, of course, Rabiu Kwankwanso and Peter Obi. You're watching a special town hall series live here